Hello and welcome to the Al-Attiyah Foundation podcast. My name is Stephen Cole, and it is my great pleasure to welcome Mr. Harshit Agrawal, Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank. Mr. Agrawal has built an extensive international career in the energy industry, spanning both the private sector, including roles at Shell and Petroleum Development Oman, and the public sector, through his current position at the World Bank. Over the years, he's held senior leadership roles around the world, steering major energy and development initiatives that integrate innovation with sustainability, perhaps more importantly, affordability. As always, we remind our listeners that Mr. Agrawal joins us in a personal capacity. The views he expresses today are his own and don't necessarily reflect those of his current or previous employers. So, Mr. Agrawal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on the podcast today. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Brilliant. Well, the pleasure is all mine. You've had, as I've just hinted, a very exciting global career. Could you walk us through this evolution from your early days as an humble engineer at Shell to your current role at the World Bank, and tell us what has guided those personal and professional transitions?
This has indeed been an exciting journey, Steve. I come from a lower middle class background in a small, peaceful town in India, but growing up in a large household. So, having a global career was something neither I or anyone in my family ever imagined. I grew up in a large household, as I said, 14, 15 family members under one roof. And I have to say, learned a great deal from living in that multi generational environment, at times chaotic, times peaceful, but always educational. And to this date, I draw a lot of personal confidence from growing up in that diverse, positive environment. I was forced in my family to venture all the way to the United States to seek a graduate degree, completed my PhD, and I joined Shell in Houston. Looking back, being exposed as an early engineer to that multinational environment at Shell did play a crucial role in shaping who I am today. After initial years in Houston with colleagues who were 15, 20 years senior to me, I joined a petrochemical complex in Singapore. That was very different, 1,000 people from diverse backgrounds at that complex. I did move to upstream oil and gas operations at the National Oil Company in Oman. And working at that national oil company really opened my eyes that, what a broader role energy companies play in national development. And this really inspired me to consider a role at a multinational development institution, multilateral development institutions. During my time in Oman, I was already coordinating with World Bank, and fortunately, that transition materialized. The working at the World Bank has been an extraordinarily enriching place to work, supporting developing countries in their energy transition, collaborating directly with decision makers, and working alongside some of the brightest minds in the field. I have to say, Steve, that you use the right word in the context evolution. And accepting that sense of evolution means recognizing there's no predetermined path. This allows us to be open to that discovery. And I think that sense of discovery, has really
Mm.
shaped and guided my personal and professional direction. As Confucius said, a man never steps into the same river twice, because both the man and the river is changing. And I do think that that change mindset allows us to remain curious about what is happening, what we don't know yet.
Mm.
And that results in lifelong learning and naturally broadens our horizon in both professional and personal journey. So that has been for me, actually.
Yes, it's same for me as a journalist. Curiosity is what drives us, and it's obviously the way forward. Can I just ask a very personal question after what you've just said? Were you always ambitious, or did you develop ambition the more you knew?
Yeah. I've been asked this question quite a bit. I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry.
people, yeah. And to be frank, because I do see ambition can be perceived as both positive or negative, but I do see that ambition, if in its purest form, is that curiosity. is curiosity, what lies beyond the horizons, right? And you see that, okay, I learn about this topic, well, what's next? And that really is, I mean, as human beings, we were not destined to just do one thing. We were destined to solve complex problems. And I think so. I would say that ambition, looking beyond the horizon,
Yes.
had always been there for me as growing in that household. That what remains beyond that household I had, and what remains beyond the graduate degree, what lied beyond
Yes.
shell. So that has always been ingrained.
Well, it's incredible. You've moved across engineering, law, finance, disciplines that often operate on their own, separately in silos. What inspired you to pursue this multidisciplinary path? And how are those skills critical for advancing sustainable energy policies? I'm trying to link them now,
Yeah.
enforcement and compliance, especially in developing economies.
Yeah, like we said earlier, I mean, this movement across different fields was actually very organic. I have to say that starting out as an engineer, I'm really grateful about that because engineering allows you to get a functional understanding of the world around you, how a motor moves, how combustion happens, how gas turns to liquid. And, this allows you to grasp the complexity of the world at
Yes,
some level and
I
understand the
understand that. That's
nuances.
that's a very good explanation. Sorry, carry
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. But it's also important to realize early on that that's only one lens to see the complex world, and each different disciplines which we have is like a different language to understand and communicate. We all know that communication breaks down when people speak different languages. So being multilingual in these disciplines means you can switch lenses. You're seeing energy transition through an engineering lens, and then next moment you're looking at a policy lens and a financial lens. And to be frank, that came on to me early in my career, where during my time at the petrochemical complex in Singapore, I remember I was asked to attend a meeting with regulators on a major flaring event that had happened because of a process upset. And there were complaints of dark plume looming over Singapore skies, and that were, and as I sat in that meeting, I witnessed two distinct sides. On one side were technical process engineers who were trying to explain why that upset had occurred and why it was necessary to flare the gas, otherwise it would lead to more major process challenges, and a bigger economic challenge. And on the other hand side were regulators and policymakers that were trying to uh, understand why the refinery couldn't stop flaring, and what to be done with that violation which has been happening. And it was
Mm.
as if there were two sides, one speaking English, one speaking Chinese, and both were right in their views, but were not speaking same language. And
Yes.
that was when it occurred to me that as individuals we need to go broader than our own expertise and broader our language skills
Well,
to other discipline.
you've certainly broadened your expertise several times. But before I explore some specific topics, could you introduce our audience to the World Bank and explain its role in shaping the global energy landscape?
Yeah, I mean, the World Bank itself has been a discovery for me in over the last 6 years since I've joined. It basically, Steve, has 5 units, and the first one of them is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development (IBRD), and that was really created at Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 after World War II to basically reconstruct Europe. And then the next part of the bank, which came, was International Development Agency, IDA. And that really caters for poorest countries around the world. Right now, we have 78 of them. But in history, South Korea was recipient of IDA, China, India, Turkey, and all of these countries which have, now prospered and grown. But both IBRD and IDA are what people see as World Bank. But there are a few other institutions as part of this organization, which is IFC, which is International Financial Corporation, which really an arm created to work with private sector. We have MIGA, which is an insurance agency, which provides, political risk assurance and other such insurance for people like us who wants to, invest in those countries and have some guarantees. And finally, there is an international center for settlement of investment disputes. And those 5 units basically put together our World Bank, and we do about 120 billion of lending across the five institutions. And IDA provides grants. One third of which of all lending is basically pure grants for the poorest countries, but the rest is concessional and price loans. So
Okay.
yeah,
Well, let's focus on energy.
yeah,
How would you describe the World Bank's mandate in energy, and how
yeah.
does your work contribute to that mission?
So the basic mission of World Bank is to create a world free of poverty on a livable planet. And to be frank, energy is absolutely central to that mission. Nearly everything we care about, from education to healthcare to economic growth, depends on access to affordable, reliable, and increasingly clean energy. And so the aim of the World Bank and what it does is to work with developing countries to expand at the core energy access. And no economy can thrive in dark. So that energy access is a key part to the mission of the World Bank, but also to improve energy security and support transition to low carbon energy systems. So we provide financial, technical assistance, and policy advice, and also convene stakeholders, so that to tackle these complex challenges which no single actor can solve alone. In my personal role, I specifically focus on working in gas sector, also on emerging fuels like biofuels and supporting industrial decarbonization.
Okay. Well, many economies in South Asia and Southeast Asia are increasingly reliant on imported LNG to meet an increasing energy demand. How do you assess the long-term sustainability of that model?
Yeah, this is indeed a very critical question, Steve. We see many South Asian and Southeast Asian economies are increasingly turning to imported liquefied natural gas, right, LNG, to meet their energy demands. And LNG does plays a vital role in their energy security, by providing a cleaner alternative to coal and oil, diversifying their energy sources, and also enabling these countries to have a base load power generation needs, where renewable energy infrastructure is still developing. But the long-term sustainability of this model does have some structural challenges, and I would like to highlight three of them. The first is what you call circular debt crisis. You have many countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh in the region that imports LNG but face unsustainable financial burdens. And why is that? Because they're importing expensive LNG in US dollars, but selling that to in subsidized power in local currency. So this creates this massive foreign exchange pressure and long-term circular debt. We are importing expensive LNG and generating power with that, which is subsidized. So that's the first, which creates circular debt, and then second is really energy security vulnerability. As soon as you are dependent on a country to import LNG, that exposes the developing economies to global market shocks and supply disruptions, right? And when foreign exchange reserves for various reasons in a country worsens, it has direct impact on how much energy you can import. So that is what we have seen over the several years, in this region. And finally, the long-term capabilities. These countries, they are always on firefighting mode. They lack this robust gas sector planning, long-term plans, and this result in actually suboptimal infrastructure, buying in spot market on the LNG in spot market, and that overall leads to energy insecurity. So we have to be, so the bottom line is that the LNG dependent model is only sustainable if countries can transition to market-based approach,
Yes.
linking gas use to sectors that can actually afford to pay this high price of LNG. So yeah, that's crucial for
Interesting.
developing countries.
Well, you have often referred to the quote evolving dynamics between the global north and south in the energy sector, particularly in relation to natural gas. Is there a role for Qatar, an LNG exporter? Is there a role for Qatar to play in helping developing countries use natural gas more efficiently and sustainably?
Yeah. I would just refer broadly to LNG exporters, and Qatar is one of the major ones. I mean, so the LNG exporters are uniquely positioned to support these developing countries in what we just mentioned. How can these developing countries use natural gas more efficiently and sustainably? And just for an example, I mean, Qatar is the world's largest LNG exporter. They are uniquely positioned as exporter um, to 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 see how developing countries use this natural gas more efficiently. And one way is through technical assistance in creating this long-term gas sector master plan, which we just mentioned, right? And this creates a win-win situations. For example, countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, if they have these 15, 20-year master plan of how much demand they will have on gas, that means they can have better infrastructure planning, they can have stronger energy security. And on the other hand, the LNG exporters like Qatar could optimize everything from field development to logistics and also reduce this counterparty financial risk. They know that their buyers will pay for this gas.
Mm.
So when both of these sides have clear visibility into supply and demand, they can structure actually innovative mechanism like flexible contracts. They can coordinate investments. They can tackle emissions like methane reduction together, and really the build partnerships that are more efficient and predictable.
Yes.
uh, and it could move beyond that, right? I mean, this could further enable stronger partnership on infrastructure investments. Export LNG exporters like Qatar have strong knowledge of developing these immense infrastructure of liquefying and natural gas and producing. There is an opportunity to have joint venture partnership, build, own, operate, transfer arrangements, project financing solutions. So we can, that whole could expand to broader collaboration. So this
That's
isn't just a development aid; it is basically strategic investment into creating stable, mutually beneficial long-term relationship between both North and South.
and that's how you see the dialogue evolving in the energy transition, and perhaps a more pragmatic approach.
To be frank, that is where it needs to evolve towards a more pragmatic approach. But fundamentally, we need to meet countries where they are, and I think we use that meeting people where they are, right? Not dictate to them, and that is where it has to start with a dialogue. We know two things for sure, right? That in energy transition, first, that energy security is right now integral to national security for all nations, and particularly for developing countries, which they are navigating the challenge of meeting growing energy demands with
and
limited
and
resources.
the challenge of global emissions.
Yeah, and all of that with limited resources. So what I mean when I say we need to meet where they are, we know that the energy landscape and availability of energy resources varies dramatically across countries. And let me give some examples. You have Cambodia in Southeast Asia, which leverages hydropower. You have Timor Leste, a very poor country which relies on gas. And you have India, which is building its solar development. You have Pakistan, Bangladesh managing declining gas reserves with import LNG, as we just talked. And in Africa, you have Nigeria and Mozambique, which have gas reserves but very limited infrastructure. And you have countries like Ethiopia and Kenya in Africa, which are developing geothermal and wind drastically. You have Brazil, which is leading in biofuels and hydropower. Chile, which is transitioning away from coal to renewables. So these all are different energy resource availability in their own countries. But despite these differing contexts of resource availability, they all share some critical priorities. They need reliable and affordable supply of energy. They need to diversify across all of these sources, but also, like you said, balance climate commitments with development needs. Uh, so each country needs to chart their own path based on available resources, exit infrastructure. And what does that mean in this dialogue between North and South? That we need to shift away from transactional assistance to genuine long term partnership. So instead of conditional aid, we need to listen to these countries rather than imposing solutions. So that we don't force these developing countries to choose between poverty reduction and climate action. They need to do that in energy access, economic growth, emission reduction, that they need to go in together, not in opposition. So it's a fine balance, which is country context dependent.
A fine balance indeed. Do you foresee renewable as the only viable solution to what we call this race to net zero, if indeed that race is still on?
Absolutely not. Actually, I think there is a consensus here that renewables alone is not the only viable solution. I think recent reports, including with from IEA, which have been published, achieving net zero requires deploying all the above solutions. Low carbon technologies. There's no single pathway. Um, but like we said, each of these countries will have different pathways to achieve not net zero. They will use their own resources. Some will prioritize solar, wind, hydropower where conditions are favorable, and others may need to rely on natural gas or even invest in nuclear
Interesting.
energy for baseload power.
And so
But
does all that mean that I'm seeing increasing signs that climate change is no longer at the top of the energy agenda? And perhaps Bill Gates is right in saying getting cheap, reliable, clean energy to the poor is now the more urgent priority.
climate still remains a key priority, and I think it the main at the base of it is you you cannot have economies grow in the dark. So at the base of it is to key point is to electrify and provide access to electricity. And so regardless of the country context, the basic economic development needs electrification, and we still have 600 million people in Africa which are without energy access. And so that's why the core priority is to bring them out. So every country will have different pathways. Some will so priority in many of these countries which do not have access would be to create grid infrastructure, electrifying them. And in other countries where you are seeing solar and wind and hydropower becoming mainstream already, right? And in other countries which are middle income and growing, industrial decarbonization will be important. Biofuels, carbon capture and storage. So in a way, we have in this dialogue, it's not one over the other, but the biggest pitfall, if I could say, in going forward on energy transition, is to ignore the energy security concerns that
Yes.
are fundamentally shaping countries' policy decision, whether it's a developed country or a developing country. So it won't be one size fit all, but at the center of that will still remain security of energy.
Of course. And let's end on a personal note. After the rich and multidisciplinary journey you've described, how do you balance your demanding international career? You must spend your life on planes as well, with your personal interests. And what advice would you share with young professionals entering the energy field today?
Yeah, I think our conversation has been about balance and the individual context. And I think this is also very individual driven. I mean, someone with 18 hours of, work hours a day uh, can think they have a balance, and somebody with 4 to 5 hours can also find that they have a balance. I think I would say a few things. One is that a passionate individual is passionate about every aspect of their integrated life, which is, whether it's work or family. Um, so my advice to the young professional would be simple. I mean, do what you love and do it with kindness. And I think that needs a little bit of breakdown. I mean, do what you love, do what you enjoy is basically a very complex topic on itself. But I would break down that to say that find what is play to you, because like you said, I mean, I spend 2/3 of my time on planes and traveling, and you can't do that if you don't if you're not doing what is play to you, if you're not enjoying it. So sustained success requires consistently delivering in long term. So when things get tough, if the work is not play, you can't compete with someone who really genuinely loves what their work, right? So that hard work becomes a burden, and that's what you don't want. And if you see that, um, you have to find, and the simple tests to finding what you love is actually the what they call energy test, which is if time melts away while doing a task, you are likely in state of play. So that would be a good test to think through, and continue doing that. But second part is also very important, which I've learned, is that do what you love, but do it with kindness, because the work and the life which we have is not a single player game. It's not just about you, it's about everyone who's playing with you. So the kindness aspect primes you to focus on being useful rather than being important. And this kindness ensures that people who you work with will want to keep playing with you for next 30 years, including your professional colleagues and and people in your personal lives, right? So it's that intersection where we meet genuine enjoyment that also benefit others, and that's key to building a successful career, but also a fulfilling life.
Yes, I couldn't have summarized it better myself. That's superb. And all comes down to that fine balance. And of course, the wonderful novel by Hinton Mystery, A Fine Balance, which I'm sure you know.
I
Mr.
do.
Agrawal, that concludes our discussion. On behalf of the Al-Attiyah Foundation, I'd like to express my very sincere appreciation for your taking part and for sharing your valuable insights on innovation, sustainability, and the evolving role of energy, all encompassed by that fine balance. We wish you continued success in your vital role of fostering innovation and maintaining a pragmatic approach to shaping sustainable pathways and advancing projects that combine technological excellence, environmental responsibility, and affordability. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. A new Al-Attiyah Foundation podcast will be released very soon, so be sure to follow us on X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. But for now, from me, Stephen Cole, and all the team at Al-Attiyah, it's goodbye.